Good evening, class 12 students. I'll continue with financing chapter. Today, in this session, I'm going to discuss fixed capital, the meaning of fixed capital, and the factors affecting fixed capital of a business. Okay. So, first of all, meaning of fixed capital. Okay. Fixed capital, I'm writing. The capital with which we buy the fixed assets of a business is called fixed capital. That means it is invested in the fixed assets of a business. And what are the fixed assets? Fixed assets are those assets which a businessman buys or a business firm buys not with the motive to sell, but these assets are meant to be kept in the business for a long time, as these assets help in conducting the business for a long time, like the factory building, the plant and machinery, furniture. Okay, so when a businessman buys these assets, his motive is to not sell these assets but to use such assets uh, as long as he can. Okay, after these assets become old and have problem in functioning, then these assets are replaced by new assets. Children, fixed assets are costly, very costly, like land and building and all. So the money gets blocked in these fixed assets for a very long time. It's recovered after a long time, after many years. Hence, it's also called block capital. It's also called block capital. Okay, example of fixed assets I've already told you: plant and machinery, factory building, furniture. Okay, now equipment. Now, what are the factors affecting the fixed capital requirements of a business? Means whether a business would require more fixed capital or less fixed capital. This would depend on certain factors. What are those factors? The first one is nature of the business, what kind of business it is. So, children, here the key points which you have to remember is that if it's a manufacturing business, means you are having a factory. Okay, so you need a big factory building. In the factory, you need plant and machinery. So obviously, your fixed capital requirement is going to be more. Okay, so I'm denoting with an upward pointing arrow high, and FC is the short form for fixed capital. Okay, this is a symbolic form of learning, and then not to be written in the paper like this, just to remember um, that in manufacturing business, upward pointing arrow means high, FC means fixed capital. Manufacturing business would be requiring high amount of fixed capital because such businesses require many or costly fixed assets like plant and machinery, factory building. Okay, now opposite of manufacturing business is, you can say, trading, where the businessman is not uh, making the goods, but he is purchasing the ready-made goods and selling. So in a trading business, the requirement of fixed capital will be low. So I'm denoting with a downward pointing arrow. FC is for fixed cost. Why? If you decide to be a trader, then you can buy a shop, or then that is going to be a fixed capital. But uh, just the shop, okay, you don't need machinery, but yeah, you need furniture, and shop you can take on rent also. So when we draw a comparison between manufacturing firm and a trading firm, which is buying and selling ready-made goods, when you compare comparatively, the fixed capital or the in manufacturing business requirement is high, because the value of fixed assets which are required in a factory are more. It's very high. Fixed number of fixed assets, plant and machinery and all. You don't require any plant and machinery in the case of a trading business. Okay, you just require stock, you require furniture obviously in the shop, you require the building of the shop. So you do require fixed capital, but comparatively, when you compare it with manufacturing business, the requirement is low. Thereafter, we have public utility undertakings. Remember the key things. Public utility undertakings. Now, what are public utilities? These are those services, essential services, without which, if these are not made available to the public, the life of the public is going to become difficult. Okay, example, water supply, electricity supply, public transport. Okay, now such undertakings require high amount of fixed capital. For example, take public transport, government buses, DTC buses, or the Uttarakhand transport service buses are there. So these buses are fixed assets. Okay. Similarly, the electricity board, Uttarakhand Electricity Board, which supplies electricity. Okay, the power which is being supplied is through wiring all over the town, transformers and all. These are all fixed assets. Okay, so public utility undertakings would require more fixed assets, and hence such undertakings require more fixed capital to buy more fixed assets. Number two, second factor would be the size of the business, or simply business size. Business size can be large and could be medium, or you can have small. Large and small, and you'll understand the point. Now, suppose let's talk about retail business only. On one hand, you have retail, this thing, Reliance store, which is a large retail outlet. Okay, obviously, it will be requiring more fixed capital as compared to a small retail outlet, a general merchant, who will be requiring less of fixed capital. Why? The fixed assets required by a large business obviously are going to be more. Hence, the fixed capital requirement by a large business is going to be more, is going to be high. Whereas a small business can be managed in a small shop. Okay, so the requirement of fixed capital is going to be low. Okay, so next one is nature of products. Nature of products. Here, let's say a firm is manufacturing. What are the two kind of products? One is capital goods. Capital goods are those goods which are required, the purpose of which is to manufacture other goods. Best example is plant and machinery. The machinery, if I am making machinery which is used by industrialists in their factory to produce other goods. Okay, so imagine how much fixed capital I would be requiring. The plant and machinery which I need to make that machinery with which other goods and services are being made. Okay, suppose car bodies, the body of the car or some automobile is being made in a machine. I make that machine. I have a factory to make that machine which is being bought from me by Tata Motors, by Hyundai, by Maruti Udyog. Example, imaginary example. Okay, so obviously when I'm producing that machine, which itself is a capital good, okay, so the machinery which will make that machinery, which will make car, is going to be very big and very costly. So such a business which is making capital goods, its fixed capital requirements are going to be very high as compared to a company which is making consumer goods. What are consumer goods? Consumer goods are not bought by industrialists for the factory, but these are bought by households. They buy these goods for home use. These are of two kinds: FMCG goods, fast moving consumer goods, or consumer durables like fridge and TV. Okay, if I say shampoo, soap, all this is FMCG. These are consumed fast. On the contrary, if I talk about microwave, fridge, TV, these are consumer durables. Anyways, a company which is making consumer goods would require fixed capital, but its fixed capital requirement is going to be less. When we draw a comparison with capital goods company, the company which is making capital goods requires more fixed capital. A company which is making consumer goods will require fixed capital, but it is going to be less. Then the next point is method of production. Okay, let me take out another page, fresh page. Children, fourth factor is method of production. There are two types of methods of production. One is capital intensive technique and the other is labor intensive technique of production. In capital intensive technique, children, the machinery, the capital goods plays a greater role than of labor. So you require less of men, less of workers and more of advanced machines. In such a firm which is using capital intensive techniques, advanced machinery, robots and all, the machine can do the job of many workers. So obviously the the fixed capital requirement is going to be very high because very costly machines are going to be bought. So fixed capital requirement is going to be high, upward pointing arrow. On the contrary, in labor intensive technique of production, you buy machinery, but that is very primitive, simple kind of traditional kind of machines. The main role is played by the labor. So machines are going to be cheaper. Hence, like cottage industry, small scale industry. So there the fixed capital requirement is going to be less. Okay. And then we have the fifth factor, diversity of product lines. Diversity means a company which is making multiple products. Let's say chocolate, like Nestle. Multiple products it's making Kit Kat chocolate, Maggi noodles, Nescafe coffee, and various other products. So obviously these products cannot be made in the same factory. It would be setting up different factories with different kind of plant and machinery. So hence its fixed capital requirements are going to be very high because more fixed assets will be very costly. Fixed assets would be required. On the other hand, a company which is making only one product line, okay, its requirement of fixed capital will be less as compared to a company which is making many products. I hope this is clear. With this, I conclude this session. Okay, so that was it. All the best. See you. Bye bye.